Have you ever paused to consider who is really standing in the classroom with your children? The teacher is entrusted with shaping the future, given the authority to speak, inspire, and influence young minds. But what happens when that guiding light meant to ignite curiosity instead turns into a fire that destroys everything in its path? A small town in Indiana, life once flowed calmly and predictably. People knew one another by name, by face, and by routine. Doors were often left unlocked. Children played outside until sunset, and schools were seen as the safest places imaginable. That sense of security shattered when a new teacher arrived, smiling and self-assured, with warm eyes and a soft voice that quickly captivated teenagers. Her name was Britney Foronberry, and at first her arrival seemed like nothing more than a promising success story. She was a young woman who dreamed of making a difference in her students' lives, doing everything that was expected of her. She encouraged them, supported them, and helped them discover who they were. Yet behind the gentle words and friendly smiles, something darker slowly emerged. First, the warning signs seemed small. Too many personal conversations, gifts, exchanged jokes that crossed the line of what was appropriate in a classroom. Then there were messages that appeared only to disappear without explanation. Before long, events unfolded that would permanently alter the lives of several families and destroy the sense of safety throughout an entire town. Britney Foronberry was born in Indiana in 1993, and from an early age she had wanted to become a teacher. To her, school represented a place where real change could happen and young lives could be shaped. After earning a college degree in education, she began working in schools across the state, stepping into the career she had always envisioned. 2018, Britney married firefighter Nicholas Foronberry, and not long after, they welcomed a child. From the outside, the family seemed wholesome and stable. Britney taught at Martinsville High School, later at Eminence High School, and also spent a short time teaching at Mountain View High. Her colleagues described her as energetic, attentive, and consistently positive with her students. Yet beneath that cheerful exterior, insecurity was growing along with an intense desire for validation. Approval from others became something she constantly sought. Over time, attention from students began to serve as her personal gauge of stability. Though she was kind and ambitious and wanted to be respected, she started searching for confirmation of her worth, not through professional accomplishments but through the personal judgments of those around her. That shift marked the earliest warning sign of the changes that would soon spiral into disaster. When Britney Foronberry began working at the school, students quickly viewed her as someone they could relate to. She set herself apart from other teachers not through strict rules or harsh discipline, but with her relaxed attitude, friendly nature, and sincere willingness to listen. She favored open, equal conversations, often going beyond class material to talk about students' personal interests and lives. That approach fostered a strong sense of trust. Parents and administrators praised her for creating an environment where students felt safe and understood. And to many, she appeared to be an ideal example of a modern educator. Over time, however, that openness began to cross professional boundaries. It increasingly acted more like a friend than a mentor, messaging students outside school hours and inserting herself into their personal lives. To the teenagers, it felt like harmless, special attention, but for Britney it became a way to satisfy her own emotional needs. Over time, the admiration and focus she received turned into something she depended on. It stopped seeking validation from colleagues or even her family, placing greater importance on being seen as special by her students. The fragile boundary between trust and impropriety gradually disappeared. That was when her life began to slowly unravel. By early 2023, those around Britney noticed significant changes. In just a few months, she lost more than 65 pounds and frequently talked about her new lifestyle, sharing before and after photos that drew an outpouring of compliments and online praise. At first, it appeared to be a personal success, but beneath the surface something was clearly amiss. This shift was about far more than health. The weight loss became A way for her to reassure herself that she could still draw attention and be admired. From there, Britney began focusing more on her appearance than on her work. New outfits, carefully applied makeup, and deliberately posed photos. On the surface, it looked like growing confidence, but in reality, it only deepened her reliance on validation from those around her. At work, coworkers started to notice her emotional fluctuations. One day she was overly energetic, the next distant or irritable. In the classroom, she became gentler, more eager to appear relatable, almost like one of the students. Yet it wasn't only about looks anymore. Britney began confiding in friends about how lonely she felt, especially with her husband, a firefighter, frequently away on long shifts. As their child grew older and became less dependent on her, the emotional connection Britney once felt at home began to weaken. She didn't turn to other adults for support. Instead, she sought the attention she craved from her teenage students. They viewed her as modern, cool, and approachable, and that made her feel valued and needed. By the spring of 2023, Britney had become increasingly active on social media as a way to stay connected with them. Her presence on Instagram and Snapchat became hard to miss. She posted classroom selfies, short videos with commentary, shared stories, and replied directly to students. First, it all appeared harmless. She sent messages like, "How did that test go?" or "Did you finish the project?" Students would respond, and the conversations continued. Gradually, the topics became more personal, shifting to who they spent time with, how they filled their evenings, and what shows they were watching. Before long, she no longer felt like just a teacher to them, but a member of their inner circle. Snapchat made it easy to communicate without leaving evidence. With messages disappearing within seconds, it became the ideal platform for Britney to maintain conversations that would later form the core of a growing investigation. According to authorities, these exchanges often began with harmless academic guidance before quickly taking on a very different tone. Many of the messages were sent late at night and filled with playful emojis and language no teacher should ever use. Although some of the teens sensed that something wasn't right, they didn't know how or if they could step away. Britney had a way of creating an illusion of safety and control. When one student attempted to distance himself, she reassured him that he could trust her, telling him he was special. She told him that he understood her better than anyone else, and those words struck deeply, persuading him to keep the conversation going. It later emerged that Britney relied on disappearing messages and hidden settings to ensure there was no lasting record. At times, she sent photos that didn't technically break any rules, yet clearly crossed professional boundaries. Images from her personal life taken at home or reflected in mirrors, quietly shared through private chats. Eventually, some students realized these interactions were unlike anything they experienced with other teachers. One student later said he felt uneasy but was too afraid to speak out, worried that no one would believe him. Another simply deleted the messages and tried to forget. A pattern of anxiety and silence took hold, and for Britney, this became routine. With each interaction, her sense of control only grew stronger. Those very messages would later emerge as the first concrete evidence of a troubling pattern, one that eventually led to formal accusations and criminal charges. Online chats became a regular part of Britney Foronberry's routine. She began cultivating even closer connections with students outside of digital conversations. At first, it all seemed innocent. She brought treats to class, shared baked goods, and bought drinks for students before sports practice. To the students, these gestures felt like simple acts of kindness, and no one recognized them as warning signs. Then came small gifts. Britney would hand out items like water bottles, pens, or keychains bearing the school logo. It sometimes remembered tiny details from conversations and transformed them into personal surprises. A t-shirt from a favorite team, a phone case, or a pair of earbuds. She was careful to make her gestures seem casual, never forced. From an outsider's perspective, it appeared as simple generosity. Over time, however, the gifts grew more costly. Court records later revealed that some Students received sneakers, clothing, and even gaming equipment. Britney justified it by claiming she merely wanted to reward those who had earned it, always taking care not to make it public. Instead, she framed it as our little secret, creating a sense of exclusivity and a special bond of trust between her and the teens she singled. To these students, her attention felt like validation that they mattered. She gave them nicknames, asked about their achievements, and offered advice. In return, they didn't want to disappoint her and worked to protect that connection. Gradually, a small, tightly knit circle began to form. For Britney, students who felt closest to her became a way to maintain control. She structured her relationships around rewards, praise, and gifts were often tied to promises, help with grades, glowing recommendation letters, or opportunities for private conversations after class. To the students, it all appeared as trust and support. They didn't realize they were gradually becoming dependent on her attention. Whenever someone tried to distance themselves, Britney would make a point of reconnecting, sending late-night messages, inviting them to talk, or telling them she missed their conversations. The emotional pull was confusing, blurring the line between genuine care and subtle pressure from her side. On the surface, it seemed friendly, even nurturing, but beneath that exterior, a subtle system was taking shape. Britney carefully divided her attention, ensuring each selected student felt unique and irreplaceable. Over time, these connections ceased to be purely professional. They developed into complex emotional dependencies, making it difficult for students to step away without feeling guilty. Once Britney Foronberry was firmly established at Eminence High School, her interactions with students began to extend beyond the classroom. She started inviting certain students to her home, claiming she simply wanted an uninterrupted, calm conversation. To parents, there were no immediate warning signs. Britney was a respected teacher and a married woman well known in the community. On the surface, nothing seemed suspicious. The Foronberry residence was located on the outskirts of Martinsville, in a quiet neighborhood where neighbors largely minded their own business. At night, the Foronberry house was dimly lit, with only the soft glow of the TV or a single lamp filtering through drawn curtains. Students who later visited described the environment as unusually personal for a teacher and oddly relaxed for someone working with minors. Britney often greeted them casually in loungewear, offered snacks, and tried to make the visit feel comfortable. She kept the mood light, but made one point very clear: what happened there stayed between them. Conversations that began with school, work, or sports quickly became personal. Students recalled that she frequently shared her own struggles, feeling exhausted, misunderstood, or lonely, which earned their sympathy and trust. Investigators later noted that the room where these meetings took place contained items that seemed inappropriate for a teacher's home setting at the time. None of the students fully realized just how far things had progressed. To them, these were simply secret hangouts. Britney expertly manipulated their trust, crafting a closed environment where boundaries gradually eroded until they vanished entirely. The first accounts of these visits only came to light once the investigation began. Multiple students interviewed separately described the house in strikingly similar detail: the furniture, decor, and even the color of the curtains. Investigators quickly recognized that these encounters were not one-off events. They were regular, repeated meetings that carried a disturbingly personal undertone. According to student statements, Britney occasionally organized what she called theme nights, asking them to wear masks from horror movies. Initially, it seemed like a harmless joke, but the atmosphere could shift quickly once the curtains were drawn. Loud music filled the room, and students were served snacks with unusual flavors. After eating, some reported feeling dizzy, disoriented, and mentally foggy. Investigators later suggested that the food provided during these themed nights might have been laced with restricted substances, creating a mild mental haze. Students described the evenings as fragmented in their memories, flashes, and pieces that made the experience feel almost ritualistic. Britney called it a trust exercise, framing it as part of a game, but it was clear that everyone's behavior followed her lead. Over time, these gatherings became a closed circle, with Britney firmly in control. Students felt they couldn't walk away and certainly couldn't tell anyone. The pressure grew steadily as Britney reminded them of the gifts she had given and insisted that everything remain a secret between them. And they did. For years the silence persisted, with each student believing they were alone in their experience. But in August 2024, that quiet began to break. Two students from Eminence High, both serving as classroom assistants, came forward to school administrators reporting that their teacher had been sending messages that felt inappropriate. According to their statements, the messages had initially focused on schoolwork but gradually became personal and clearly overstepped professional boundaries. First, the administration approached the situation cautiously, wary of sparking a scandal. Britney had a strong reputation, and taking immediate action could have drawn unwanted attention. However, when the students presented evidence, screenshots, chat logs, and detailed accounts of conversations, the school acted. They informed the students, guardians, and alerted the district education office. The following day, Britney was placed on temporary leave. While the school conducted a review, it was informed that an internal investigation was underway, though she wasn't given the full details of the complaint. That evening she deleted all her social media accounts and stopped responding to calls from colleagues. But the next morning she had submitted her resignation, citing stress and family reasons. The administration hoped to resolve the matter quietly and quickly, avoiding public scrutiny. However, the abrupt resignation and lack of official statements fueled rumors among staff and parents. The growing suspicions reached the county prosecutor's office, prompting investigators to take over. Just days after Britney's departure, detectives from Morgan County began scrutinizing her digital footprint, focusing on Instagram and Snapchat activity, particularly the disappearing messages. As students had described, that data would become the foundation of a full-scale investigation, eventually uncovering links between incidents at both Martinsville High and Eminence. But for the two students who came forward, the decision had been difficult. They knew that speaking out could upend the life of someone many viewed as a kind and caring teacher. Yet, fear and doubt eventually gave way to a clearer understanding. Remaining silent would only allow the harm to continue. From that moment, Britney Foronberry's story was no longer just a whispered rumor within the school. It had become a criminal investigation, one that would soon capture headlines across Indiana. In December 2024, the probe into Britney took an unexpected turn. An elderly woman arrived at the Morgan County prosecutor's office, insisting on an urgent meeting with an investigator. It introduced herself as the grandmother of a 16-year-old student. After news spread about Britney's detention, her grandson finally came forward, revealing that he, too, had been involved. Her testimony became a pivotal moment in the case, revealing an incident dating back to 2023 when Foronberry was still teaching at Martinsville High School. According to the grandmother, her grandson had remained silent for months, but after seeing the media coverage, he could no longer stay quiet. He initially described Britney as a teacher who seemed simply caring. She brought him food, gave small gifts, and engaged in friendly conversation. Over time, the interactions escalated to personal messages and off-campus meetings. It claimed that after consuming something she had given him one evening, he suddenly felt ill and experienced gaps in his memory. These details corresponded with prior statements from other students. The case was then assigned to Detective Patrick Williams, who had already been reviewing Britney's digital communications. Detective Williams began connecting the pieces: dates, phone records, message histories, and detailed descriptions of her home. The number of matches was too great to be mere coincidence. With this new evidence, authorities obtained a warrant to search the Foronberry residence. Again, investigators seized electronics, handwritten notes, and physical items that directly corresponded with what students had previously reported. Once this information became public, it triggered a flood of reactions. Families from other schools where Britney had Tot began stepping forward, worried that their children might also have had contact with her. What had started as isolated reports now appeared to reveal a troubling behavioral pattern. Thanks to one grandmother's decision to speak out in her grandson's courage, the case widened. No longer a local matter, it now involved more victims and more witnesses. For the first time, people began to speak out. Nicholas Foronberry, Britney's husband, had long been respected for his calm demeanor and dependability. As a firefighter, he was trusted in times of crisis. Yet as the investigation unfolded, his reputation only made the revelations more shocking. Multiple students reported that Nicholas had been home during some of Britney's encounters. They said he did not intervene, seemingly oblivious to what was happening. One student remembered seeing him in the hallway while Britney hosted one of her discussion nights, while others recalled him walking past the room without asking questions. Investigators later confirmed that Nicholas knew students were visiting the home. Some witnesses even claimed he helped Britney organize the gatherings, framing it as assistance with school projects. When Nicholas was called in for questioning, he denied any knowledge, but his statements conflicted with both the evidence and student testimonies. Shortly thereafter, he was formally charged with concealing information and intimidating minors. The revelation was shocking. A man once regarded as a hero was now at the center of a case that shattered public trust in a family once seen as exemplary. By early February 2025, the investigation into Britney Foronberry had reached its final stages. After months of gathering testimonies and reviewing evidence, the Morgan County Prosecutor's Office issued a warrant for her arrest. Britney was taken into custody outside her Martinsville home early in the morning. She did not resist, but during questioning she denied several allegations, insisting that the messages and meetings had been misinterpreted. Her explanations, however, did not align with the evidence. Investigators had gathered extensive proof from text messages, phone records, and student testimonies. Charges were also filed against her husband, Nicholas Foronberry, who was arrested just days after Britney during a press conference. Detective Patrick Williams confirmed that the case involved multiple incidents spanning 2023 and 2024. He explained that Britney faced charges for using digital platforms to communicate inappropriately with students and for serious breaches of professional boundaries. All affected students were granted protected witness status, keeping their identities confidential. Following the official announcements, the public reaction was immediate and intense. Parents demanded answers, and the school district launched internal investigations at both Martinsville and Eminence. The community struggled with how someone with such a flawless reputation could conceal such behavior. For many, it shattered trust not just in a single teacher but in the education system as a whole. One thing was undeniable. After years of being ignored, the students' voices were finally being heard. What had once seemed like minor, isolated concerns had become the backbone of a major criminal investigation. Authorities confirmed that the actions of Britney and Nicholas Foronberry caused tangible harm not only to individual students but to the broader sense of safety within the school community. What began as a private matter had escalated into a high-profile legal case, one that would influence teacher oversight policies throughout the county. By spring 2025, the legal proceedings reached a critical point. After months of interviews, expert analysis, and evidence collection, the Morgan County Prosecutor's Office formally charged Britney Foronberry with 41 separate counts. These charges included distributing inappropriate material to minors, unprofessional digital communication, manipulation of students, and serious violations of professional conduct. By summer 2025, Britney Foronberry remained in custody without bail, awaiting a final verdict. Her husband, Nicholas Foronberry, was also being held as part of a separate investigation connected to the same case. When the judge announced a delay in the proceedings to allow for additional forensic review, the courtroom fell silent. Few doubted that the verdict would ultimately be guilty. Yet even before the judgment was delivered, the damage was already done. Trust once broken cannot easily be restored. As one parent remarked at a community meeting, the most frightening monster is the one who knows how to smile. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.